Okay, now let's see, from where do we start? Well, I'm going to speak a bit about the multidimensionality of perception of the human being, because we are living in a sort of a three-dimensional world. So our senses perceive 3 dimensions. And then we also have a perception of time. So that makes 4 dimensions. But somehow inside us, we miss not having more dimensions than that. Many people have lots of theories about that. They will tell you, you are now in this dimension. Tomorrow, with a bit of evolution, we could be on a higher dimension. And things like that. It doesn't really work that way, that you're on one dimension and you can go to another dimension. In reality, it's a bit different. Let's look at what are those dimensions and what do we perceive and what we don't perceive. Actually, I want to make it clear that we are all living in all dimensions of creations simultaneously. We don't have to go up or down. We are living all of them. That we only perceive 4 doesn't mean that we are not living in the others. We are living in all the other dimensions. And I'll give an example. Now, the 4 dimensions we live in, the 3 of space-time plus, the space, time, and all the physical dimensions. We have other dimensions within us that we live in that we are not aware of because they are not linked to our senses. Our brain that has a perception, and the perception of the brain related to our world happens through the senses, the 5 senses, and plus the sense of time. So we get sensory information, and the sensory information allows us to perceive all the dimensions that the senses can actually perceive. What the senses cannot see, what information from beyond the senses, is something that we don't perceive. So the problem is our senses can only bring us information from about 1 or 2% maximum of the absolute reality. So the limited dimensions I perceive and live in are part of this minute part of reality. Now, like I said before, we live in many other dimensions. We live in all the dimensions of the universe. Don't worry, you don't have to go up or down to reach them. We already live in them. The problem is my perception is limited to the sensory perception. Now, what are the others? They're on unconscious levels, since they're not in my perception. Call them unconscious, subconscious. For example, all the laws of nature are in that invisible dimension, but they run my biological system. They run this. They run life inside the life force that comes in with all the laws of life that's on my body. I'm not aware of them, but I'm aware of their action in my body. And these are so many dimensions that work in there, and they work before I become conscious, because the body has to be alive in order for the blood to reach the brain, in order for the senses to work, in order for my perception to begin. So there's sensory perception, creates a database. This database is my sensory soul, or the mask I wear, because it's only 1 or 2% masking another 98%. So I Ibrahim that you see, I know myself as Ibrahim. Okay, where is Ibrahim? Ibrahim is in that mosque. Ibrahim exists only in the 2% of the mosque, not beyond that. Beyond that, there are sort of values and qualities and things that result from the interaction of the senses in our world, in our material world, and the resulting qualities, they are experienced by the invisible part of the total being I am. That means this invisible part is a secondary soul living inside me. Like I say, my roommate, I'm two persons living in one body, one sensory and one extrasensory. The extrasensory lives in dimensions that I don't perceive. But what are those dimensions that I don't perceive? Well, first of all, there are individual levels where all the laws of nature interact with my body and where the result of my actions are absorbed and all that. That's an individual level. That's related a bit to my individuality, although it is not so separated from the other levels, like on the physical level where my body is separate from the environment. On that invisible part, the first individual part is their individuality, but at the same time, it's linked to another level which is collective, linked to another level which is universal. So the levels are fluid from one into the other. So that other part of me actually goes from the qualities linked to my actions all the way to every bit of information that exists in creation. So I perceive and I live in all the dimensions that exist in creation. The problem is which ones I'm aware of and which ones I'm not aware of. But it's wrong to think that humanity lives in a certain dimension, then later goes to another dimension, and later evolves to another dimension. That's just a quantitative way of looking at things. That's not very true, because actually what happens is all the time, depending on the activity we're doing, we're moving between all the existing dimensions of the universe. When my body is working, it is moving through certain dimensions that have to do with the biological functions of life. When I'm thinking, I'm moving through different dimensions, depending on the quality and level of thought I'm in, I can move in different dimensions. So actually, one part of me is continuously moving in all dimensions. We shouldn't imagine those dimensions to be one higher than the other and all that. This division only exists in my time and space concepts, but in reality, all those dimensions are sort of mixed together. They're undifferentiated, they're formless. So even if I perceive things from those dimensions, I have to bring it into my left brain perception to perceive it. And if I, through intuition or through some form of perception, I perceive it in my left brain perception, I'm not really perceiving anything in those dimensions, because they are timeless, spaceless, and they do not have the same content like my personal data bank. So what happens? I have to translate any information from the other side and timestamp it, give it space configurations, time configurations, and then associate it with the meaning level that I have in my brain so that it becomes perceivable. So my perception of all the higher dimensions is through translation. Nobody perceives it directly. There's always a form of personification. A formless dimension must be personified or formed to be perceived in a world of duality. So when I don't have this sensory perception anymore, my perception will be totally in the other. What was unconscious will become my new consciousness. Then I'll see things as they are. So there's a difference between seeing all those invisible dimensions while I'm alive. I see them through translation. When I go there, I see them in a sort of being directly there, not looking at them in a way that I see them, but I will be part of them. Because on the other side, this duality isn't exactly like this here. You are part of everything and everything is part of you. It might seem complicated a bit, but as we go along, it will become much easier, as I will explain. Now, let us see how this functions. Having a brain that works with one person inside of me, that's the time-space person, that's the me, the ego, and the other brain working with the universality. The left brain working with the time, space configuration of my sense perception is linked to my body, and its lifespan is temporary. But the other one, since it is timeless, it doesn't adhere to the confinements of my time and space. It will be there beyond my physical life. It will be there for a long time. And I shouldn't really say that the life beyond death or life after death, because the other dimensions exist simultaneously with mine. The left brain perception, or the life as I know it, or Ibrahim that exists now, is just a leaf floating over the waters of the ocean. It's a very temporary state. The reality is in the ocean itself. So let's go. If this thing is a sort of relationship of right brain and left brain, we have used this categorization. Actually, Carl Gustav Jung, the Swiss psychologist, was the first person to use the categorization, as we explain in our courses and in my first book. And we will follow that categorization, but not in the same way that we did before. We will look at it a bit differently, because I want to look at it from a certain angle. I want to look at it from the angle of the perception of the heart. I want to concentrate a bit on the perception of the heart. What does perception of the heart mean? You know, in the Middle East, in the Arabic language, for example, and all other Middle Eastern languages, we have about half a dozen names for the heart. Well, why do we need so many different names for the same thing? We must be addressing different things in different dimensions. So in the Western culture, the heart is just the heart. Sometimes you say, I'm in love, it has to do with the heart, things like that. But you really don't see in the heart more than what it is. But in all other Middle Eastern languages, we have so many names for it. For example, if you go to the Bible, the Old Testament, and the Quran also have one name, for example, Lib or Lob. Lib means heart. It's one of the names of the heart. But what does this Lub or Lib mean? It means the internal being of something. So it's a holistic internal state of a visible external state. So how come the heart is an actual inner level of my whole state? So it's just more than just a heart. It's a heart mind, soul at the same time. How can it be heart, mind, and soul at the same time inside me? Well, if we go back 5,000 to 6,000 years to the ancient Egyptians, we find that they weigh the heart against a feather in the whole of Mat. Mat is the netter, or the power of nature, that has to do with the universal order, with the equality and harmony and balance of everything in the universe. Now, the universal order of Mat here has something to do with the heart, because in the whole of Mat, they weigh the heart against the feather. They can't be weighing the actual heart against the feather. Of course, I mean, it would be heavy. But if you look at the heart, it looks like a container, like a pot. So they're actually weighing something inside that pot against the feather, something energetic, not visible, weightless. And so weightless, its weight is insignificant that it can be weighed against the feather. But now the feather with Mat represents universal order. So what does the human heart have to do with universal order? That's a concept that exists now in ancient Egypt, but we'll take it from there and go and try to find out this link. How can a person's heart relate to universal order? Well, let's take it on the first level that we know. If a person's heart is linked to the body, can the heart actually introduce complete harmony and universal order, at least in my body? Body, vitality level, emotional level, mental level. Can the heart do that? In order to do that, it must have its own perception. It must have organs of perception. It must have organs of formation and all that. Now, there is something about old civilizations or ancient civilizations. We always weigh ancient civilizations against the level of modern technology we have. That's very, very wrong, because I can't be good at one thing and weigh others in relation to that one thing while forgetting everything else about them. Now, okay, they didn't have internet, they didn't have all that, but let's look at other things. When we go to modern medicine, for example, we discover something today and find that they used to do it as an everyday thing 5,000 years ago, but we only discovered it today. So you can't weigh everything just against our modern technology. Give an example, brain surgery. We used to look at the drawings of the ancient Egyptians and the reliefs and papyrus and see them opening up the head, playing in there. And we thought it had to do with some form of initiation. It must be mythological, it can't be real. They can't be opening people's heads that easily and all that. And then about 30 years ago, we did the first brain operations. And then we found out that actually a lot that has to do with brain operations looks like those instruments that we have in the Egyptian Museum, and that could it be that brain operations were done many years ago as an everyday thing? Now they started X-raying mummies and finding that actually brain operations were done there. So the other things, for example, like they did, for example, when somebody has cataract, we now remove the lenses and put artificial lenses. Now they found that the ancient Egyptians, they remove the cataract without removing the lenses. I mean, this is something we haven't reached today. How can you do an operation to cure cataracts, remove it, and keep the natural lenses? I spoke to some medical doctors, they tell me, yes, but I mean, when they did that, there's no way that the patient could see afterwards. they wouldn't call it a medical treatment if the result of that treatment, the person doesn't see. I mean, he'd be keeping his cataract instead of losing his sight. So we ask ourselves many things like that. We haven't reached this part yet. We haven't reached the part where in the specialization of ancient Egyptian, they had a doctor for the right eye and a doctor for the left eye, knowing that any organ of which you have two, you have opposite polarities that interact together in complementarity. So they knew that. And when they study one eye, its relationship with all the organs of the body, it's going through a certain polarity. So they had somebody specialized in this polarity and another one in that polarity. We haven't reached that yet. So when we look at what they're saying about the heart, we still haven't found really the secrets of which they spoke about the heart. But in 1991, there's a scientist called Armour who actually identified brain cells in the heart. So we have discovered a heart brain, like we discovered a bit earlier the gut brain, and like we discovered brain cells in different organs of the body. There is a substantial amount of brain cells in the heart that can be identified as a heart brain. So when we say intellect of the heart, and we used to say that it goes back to thousands of years where we say intellect of the heart, it has been proven that the heart has a brain. Now, in my personal work and personal research, I have found certain organs in the physical body that connect to the heart brain. So this heart brain has organs in the body with which it interacts, and has other senses that are totally beyond the body, through which also it connects to the invisible and higher dimensions of creation. So that means, okay, it is extrasensory in a sense that it does not use the five senses, this heart brain. Now, what are the places or the organs in the body that are directly connected to it? First, I have here my right brain. Here, that's my left, that's my right. I'm watching myself on the screen, so I'm mixing right and left. So this part of the brain here, the top a bit to the right because it's on the right brain, this part connects directly to the heart brain. Now, the inner ear, when you go in the spiral of the inner ear, the center of that spiral of the inner ear connects directly to that heart brain that I have. Now, the pineal gland connects directly to the heart brain that I have. So now I know some organs connect to the heart brain. Okay, what happens if I do some testing in that with the heart brain, and then I harmonize the energy of the brain of the heart? That's at the top right corner of the heart. I work on that corner and then treat that corner with whatever energy I find, the quality of energy to balance it. When I do that, automatically every organ in the body gets balanced. And so we have an ancient saying in Islam, when the Prophet once spoke about the heart. And he said, in the heart, there is a place in the heart, a small thing in the heart, that if it is corrected, it corrects the whole body. Now, I thought that this would be the nervous ganglion in the heart that actually gives the first pulse, the basic pulse from which all the other pulses in the body result. And it would be logical to say, if the basic pulse is disturbed, everything else gets disturbed. If it's harmonized, the rest will be harmonized. I didn't find any other part of the heart that could fit this description. But later on, when I was able to measure the brain of the heart, I found out that this brain corrects everything in the body. That means this brain inside the heart is connected to the universal order of Ma'at. That's why it figured in the ancient Egyptian on the balance against the feather representing the law of universal order. So the intellect of the heart was the place of universal order. What or how was the heart connected to universal order? First of all, if we say the right brain, the pineal, connect to the heart, that means this is connected to the extrasensory perception. And although it is connected to the right brain, to the inner ear and pineal gland, it is also connected to its own sensory organs of clairvoyance and clairaudience that are on a different level than the clairvoyance and clairaudience of the pineal gland and the inner ear. This is a different level, a different dimension. So when the pineal gland or the inner ear or the right brain perceives some information of the heart, that can be translated into left brain perception, and I could perceive them in a translated way. But the other senses of clairvoyance and clairaudience that the heart has are totally beyond the physical, and they connect to universal information and can actually bring in part of this universal information into my perception if I am doing an action in the physical world that is in resonance with something on that other side. Then a sort of one of the harmonizing laws comes from that other side into my action. That means, what do I mean by one of the harmonizing laws? The harmonizing laws are first translated into time and space. So they come out as, in my understanding, they come out as the ethical values. So the heart puts ethical values into action. What do I mean by putting ethical values into action? I mean that the balance of the 99 or 98% that I'm not perceiving is brought into the 2% I'm perceiving to reach excellence of action. So excellence of action here is when the action is so perfect that it actually resonates with the whole universe in a sort of harmonizing action, when it has a harmonizing action on all the invisible dimensions. So you see, our daily actions can be made through the 99%, through this connection, through the ethical connection. They can be made to bring harmony into all those higher dimensions I'm speaking of, I want to be in. Now, let's look at it in a different way. Can a human being reach a level where he actually consciously perceives more than the dimensions we have? Can I perceive an extra couple of dimensions? And maybe this is what I call moving into dimensions. Moving into dimensions means only moving my perception, my daily perception into them, because my subconscious perception is already there. Now, for that, we go back to the categorization of Jung of humanity. Let us take the primitive humans. They were centered in the right brain and in the heart. That means their left brain perception, their ego was very, very weak. The center of perception was mainly in the right side of the brain and in the heart. That which makes them in a unity with the environment, because the right brain has a pattern and a holistic way of seeing things. It sees the unity of creation. It is not analytical. It's the left brain that's analytical. So if something is anchored in the right brain, it sees the unity of everything. And so the heart brain is linked to the right brain. So the heart brain actually perceives the unity of everything in nature. It doesn't differentiate me from nature. And the primitive people who lived solely or mainly in the heart or in the right brain perception, because at the time the left brain was still budding. It was in a very weak state. There was more, instead of the personal ego, that there was the herd ego. So the herd, the collective brain, was more important than that brain. But that means that they unconsciously adhered to the laws of nature, unconsciously perceived the unity of creation. I mean, it's a state that to us seems fantastic, being able to perceive all this, but they perceived it and acted on an unconscious level. But in a sort of living in the divine laws and the laws of nature, they are much more advanced than us. Like the animal would be more advanced than us in all that. The animal adheres to the laws of nature. The animal doesn't have to think about the unity of creation because he is part of it. Now, if we go a step further to the ancient Egyptian, here the left brain, the senses, they start the analytical, diversifying, ego-building state. And then in that state, they somehow is still evolving. So the center is still in the right brain. So they actually still serve the right brain. In a way, the senses, for example, the left brain discovery of analytical things like number, like music, like geometry, like all that, they discover that in order to use those things on the subtle energy, holistic levels of the right brain. So it was a sort of a balanced. The quantifying aspect was a sort of subordinate to the qualifying, qualitative aspect of that part of the brain. Now, let us go a bit and see how the brain looked at the forces of the universe. In the beginning, primitive man, he was part of that whole thing. He lived inside it. So he saw the sort of, he had his own personification, very weak personification of divinity in the matriarchal form, in the form of the goddess, because this was the form of a being from which other beings came out. So actually, this right brain perception, the holistic information, the holistic perception of qualitative things is a female attribute. So it was normal that the primitive humanity would be matriarchal. Even their gods were sort of pictures. Always we saw the first women statues. They didn't have men statues as gods, just the women. These were the sacred statues that they had. This was a purely matriarchal way of seeing divinity. Then as they moved to ancient man, ancient Egyptians looked at things a bit differently. Now, the left side started budding. So actually here, they looked at creation in a balanced state, not patriarchal, not matriarchal. They made the netters, or powers of nature, you call them gods, they always came in concerts, always male and female in concerts. So there was no patriarchal or matriarchal, there was a complementarity of being. So the divine netters were always coming in pairs, and that's how they saw divinity. They could have a queen or a king. It didn't really matter. We have many queens in ancient Egypt, many kings in ancient Egypt. It didn't really matter. So whoever led the armies, it could be the queen, could be the king. It was a well-balanced society between matriarchal and patriarchal sort of personification of divinity. It was always well-balanced. Then what happened? We go into modern humanity when the actual perception goes into the left side, leaving the heart behind. So now the heart in modern humanity is not the heart that thinks, that feels, that does everything. It's just the heart that pumps blood and gives you life. Those inner values are not perceived anymore. And we get the analytical, diversifying mind that has created the great civilization that we have today. But this mind, in its diversification, is a mind that is versed or characterized as patriarchal. So it is automatic that they personify divinity as a male, because it's the left brain personifying. It's the divinity of the left brain. When it's balanced, you have both divinities of right and left together, and then their consorts. Before that, when it's more to the right, you have the female goddess. So the problem is with the imbalanced situation that we have today. We have to understand that the left brain, in its diversification, in its analysis, it is separative in nature. It separates things. Now, the right brain is, in its holistic aspect, it brings things together. So the matriarchal concept that's centered in the heart brings everything in nature as part of a holistic unity. So acceptance of the other is like acceptance of components of the same thing. When me and you and the other and all that feel we are components of unity, so we accept each other as components of that unity because we see each other as components of that unity. Now, the left brain is different. By its analytical diversifying things, it separates us instead of unifies us. So it sort of goes with our perception of separating from the other. And that's the cause of all evil that we have today in our society. We cannot accept the other. Acceptance of the other is a very important thing that is part of your heart perception. And when you don't accept the other, you're moving from the ethical values of your heart. So let's go and look at the heart, the balance between the heart and the concept and the mind of the ancient Egyptian. He could actually, in this balance, he could perceive with his waking awareness, with his perception, he could perceive the things in the right brain. So actually it was a human being who has reached the level where the door opened between right and left, and now he could perceive all the dimensions of the universe. Now this would be a state that we hope one day to reach, but they were already there. They were already there, that with the left brain perception, they saw everything on the other side. They saw actually all the forces of nature that were there. They could actually personify them, because there's always, to perceive, you must personify. So they personified the forces of nature, actually saw them, interacted with them, and all that. So when you see the forces of nature depicted, and you think they were gods, they were things. No, imagine that the ancient Egyptians, he lived and saw those beings as he drew them. He saw those beings, interacted with them, he spoke with them, they spoke with him, they went with him in every activity, because now he lived not in our limited dimensions like here, no, he lived in all the dimensions at the same time. So he could see the world of the living, he could see the world of the dead, he could see all those levels and could make rituals, could make things of transition between them. So this is a very, very special state of mind that led to the building of great civilizations that surpassed the cycle of time that had to do with civilizations usually that last 300, 400 years. No, they stayed for thousands of years. So, but then came the great catastrophe where the shift went completely on the left side. Modern humanity was born. Now, here, perception shrinks again. Shrinks now again to the five senses, closes on the rest. So you close the door on the rest, and then you call the rest, call it mythology, call it whatever you want, but you don't want to acknowledge it. You just close the door and stick to your quantitative world here. Now, okay, you do this, you get a very advanced technology, it's very, very good. But the separativeness creates aggression. Because if you don't feel that you and the other belong to the same unity, you feel completely separate from that other is a different person than you are. So aggression increases because there's no identification between people. So we are entering a state of ever-increasing diversity that will end up with ever-increasing racism, aggression, and things like that. How can we bring back the heart into this formula? You see, we have to, the human being now has to evolve. It's like a spiral. There was a time when we had this balance. There was a time starting matriarchal, then the balance between both of them, and then we go back into now one end where we are totally patriarchal, totally diversive, and then the spiral will go up. So there is a possibility to reach a level of balance between both of them on a higher level than even before. So we could reach a future human being who is more advanced in this aspect than the ancient Egyptians, who actually reaches a level where his awareness all of a sudden expands and he is consciously aware of all the dimensions of the universe, where he can see actually all other worlds, all other entities. Now, when will this happen, or how can it happen? It must happen by awakening and acknowledging the brain of the heart, let it take action, let it play a role in the way we think. That means the subconscious awakens, opens the door, enters into our conscious reality. Now, this could look a bit strange. I mean, can we do it? Can't we do it? Well, we don't have a choice. Humanity is now stretched like in an elastic band into complete diversity in one end. If it pulls more and more into left brain diversity, the elastic band breaks and you're out. And probably that's the end of human civilization. So let's hope that when the elastic band stretches enough, there'll be an urge to pull it back. An urge to pull it back through all right brain activities that are slowly emerging today in many parts of society. They can be completely eclipsed by the left brain or embraced by the left brain. And then we can reach another form of superhuman like there was before. In order to understand how all this plays a part, I'll take you to something, take you with me back to Egypt. Let's look at the pyramids. Where and how did the pyramid concept start? Now, if the pyramid concept is looked at from its, like the outer pyramid shape, then you can say, okay, this has been done. The Great Pyramid was built by King Khufu so many thousand years ago and all that. In my opinion, that would be, you'd be speaking about the last phase of a certain sacred edifice, because those edifices change over time, built one over the other and all that. So what you only see is usually the last phase. So, okay, I'm with you. The last phase comes from King Khufu of the 4th dynasty. All that's well and done. But the concept then goes back as far as humanity, because we know that when the first humans at the dawn of humanity, primitive man, discovered the sacred power spots, he discovered them because he discovered them by his feeling, by clairvoyance, by everything. He imitated the animals. But he started, the concept of the pyramid started with what? Putting 2 big megalithic stones and one above them that we call the dolmen. This dolmen that looks like an arch or a gateway, this was the first sort of enclosure done on a sacred power spot. It's like you wanted to enclose the light. So it's the heart sort of projecting itself outwards in stone on a sacred power spot. That means on a sacred power spot, that means connected through the vortex to multidimensional levels. So then it becomes an actual stone replica of the heart, and always in the direction between, the opening is between the equinoxes, between east and west. So it is connected to the cycle of life. So that is actually the first concept of the chamber. This chamber is the primordial, megalithic expression, outer expression of the heart, manifesting itself out of the human, what we call unconscious, but at the time it was out of the human multidimensional experience. So when did the pyramid start? the pyramid started as the first projection out of the heart into this dolmen shape that later was covered with a mound and later on became a pyramid. So the whole concept of the pyramid was evolved first as like the chamber, then a simple mound, and then we move now from primitive man to ancient man. Now ancient man comes with his geometry, with his mathematics, and then the outer shape interacts with the energetic principles found in numbers and geometry, because at that time numbers and geometry were subtle energy forms of expression. So they built the pyramid shape. So the pyramid shape comes out right of the heart of man. It comes out, or humanity, sorry for saying man, heart of man, woman, or heart of humanity. So the pyramid shape is actually an outward expression of the human heart spreading the harmonizing principle or the universal order, because on a sacred power spot, the dolmen connecting east-west and all that, it spreads this harmonizing spiritual energy, spreading the universal order the way the heart is doing it exactly. So humanity has actually extroverted in a way its own heart into the pyramid shape from the beginning of humanity to today. So you see, this is something that is more important than how were the stones moved, or how were the stones built. No, it is something, think of it. The pyramid symbolizes from its inner chamber to its outer shape, it symbolizes to the movement through the heart, from the unconscious, from the universal, to the conscious level, to the interactive level, into mathematics and geometry and all that. Now, let's look, in order to start building things from the dolmen all the way to the pyramid, in this concept of sacredness, the human being had to develop certain rituals, because when interacting with sacred power spots, humanity had rituals. The rituals of cleanliness, rituals of things, because they knew that those buildings were doorways connecting to the universal, so you should adhere to certain rituals. And we can see in all the ancient rituals related to sacred power spots, but also in the building rituals. We can see how in ancient monuments, the people who worked in the stones were people who were spiritually purified. They had to go spiritual initiation. They had to have cleanliness. They have to be the best of their tribe in action, in everything, in ethics and all that, so that they could touch the sacred stones of such a building. And we know the beginning of the building professions, the traditions like the Sufi traditions and things, and even earlier traditions. It was actually the builders of sacred monuments who had the secrets of connecting the profession to the laws of the universe. And that's why they close themselves as sort of guilds that built those buildings. Now, we think of all those Sufi groups or other groups as esoteric societies of things like that, teaching maybe inner knowledge and all that. It was not like that. It was teaching the inner knowledge actually through performing a profession. They taught you how to make a profession that would automatically link you to a knowledge. So a guru or a teacher in that sense would be the person who taught you the profession of achieving excellence of action. That was the teacher, the person who did that, not just a guru teaching you anything, teaching you religious or teaching you some doctrines or things like that. That was not the original sense. The original sense was, it was the person who taught you through your profession linked to the connection with the universe in a sacred passport, how to reach the excellence of action in that profession of yours, whether it's a mason or a builder or a draftsman or whatever. That was the whole way of working with edifices like that. And now this takes me to, some people say, for example, think that the ancient Egyptian used slaves to build the pyramid. This is a very, very wrong idea, because you cannot bring a person who is not free to touch a sacred stone. Every stone in that building is sacred. Every stone in the temple, every stone in the walls of the temple is sacred. You can't bring anybody, not even, I mean, slaves are out, no way. But you can't bring, you can't order a person to do it, because he wouldn't be doing it of his own free will. So he wouldn't be, this wouldn't be the right person to build. So the workers here in whether pyramids and temples and all that were part of those ancient guilds of professions who actually achieved excellence of action in their work. Nobody was forced. They had to undergo initiation to be able to go and work in those buildings. When I see films, for example, like the one about Ramses, and you see they show Jewish slaves building the pyramids, I mean, why not look at history? Not only were slaves not used in building the pyramids, only initiated workers, only Sufi guilds, but the Jews or the Semitic tribes who came to Egypt didn't come in the ancient kingdom. In Egypt, there were three great civilizations. The ancient kingdom, that was the pyramid era, when pyramids were built. 2,000 years later came the Middle Kingdom, and then 2,000 years was the New Kingdom. So you had three kingdoms. The Semitic arrival in Egypt was in the intermediate period between the Middle Kingdom and the New Kingdom. So that was at least historically 2,000 years after the pyramids were built. And there are inscriptions from those times about people who went to Saqqara, for example, and they wrote there. So you find there are two strange inscriptions written there from the second or the Middle Kingdom. To them, this older kingdom was already very old, 2,000 years. There's a lot. We don't know what happened exactly 200 years ago. So imagine 2,000 years ago. So one of them wrote there on one of the walls, he wrote that this place seems to have belonged to very primitive giants, or he sees them as giants, because in the Middle Kingdom they were building magnificent temples, like in Karnak and all that in the south. So when he visited the north, and he found like in that inscription was near the stepped pyramid of Saqqara. So he wrote, these were primitive people, probably giants, building very primitive things. Another inscription beside him from the same era speaks about this must have been the remnants of a great civilization that we do not understand. You see, so saying that slaves were used to build the pyramids is wrong. Saying that Jews is even absurd, because 2,000 years difference. And it was built by Egyptian workers before, because we found the cities, they built complete cities, towns for the people who worked in the pyramids. They had their houses, their kitchens and everything, and their ways of worship, their ways of preparation. I mean, it was a whole ritual of building the pyramids. So the ancient Egyptians, their relationship to slaves or prisoners, they never let them work in their sacred buildings. Now, there's even a story, a nice story. It was written in one of, in one of the wars that they had with the Hittites. They had lots of wars with the Syrians and all this place. Now, the soldiers coming back from there who took prisoners, they were ordered to carry the child of the prisoner. If a prisoner had a child, the warrior had to carry the child of that prisoner on his shoulders if he wants to take the prisoner with him to Egypt. So if he took a prisoner, he was responsible not to leave a child behind and had to carry on his shoulder the child. And some of the soldiers were not happy because of those orders, carrying the children of their enemies, walking back all the way so many kilometers back to Egypt when they were far away. So you see, there was this social order that was very important about who builds what, how you build your things. All this can only happen because the heart, the intellect of the heart, was still playing a role. Now, when we look for a civilization, a future civilization that hopefully would have a balanced relationship between heart and intellect, we don't want to have equality between the male and female. That wouldn't serve anything. The ancients never had this equality. What they had was complementarity. See, it's just like a particle, an atomic particle. If you had the proton and electron, if you want to put them together completely, they were, what complementarity is, they interact according to a higher law of the center. So the heart and the mind in a future humanity should interact in a sort of complementarity. And then we should understand then that this whole patriarchal way of looking at divinity doesn't serve anything, because divinity is not male and not female anyhow. The identifying it with a certain sex is just a way of personification, a way of the ego. But in reality, divinity is abstract. Divinity contains everything. It's abstract. And when we look at it that way, the male and female play complementary roles in this abstraction. And this is the way humanity should evolve. And then you will find that accepting the other is the only solution that will make us look inside and see the heart. Because if one way of touching the brain of the heart is, like we said, bring out the ethics in our action, achieving excellence of action, and accepting the other is the first step towards excellence of action. So this is the sort of, I mean, we went through a little journey now about intellect of the heart. I have prepared a few other topics that I wanted to speak about, but as you see, I've already taken 7 minutes or something out of your time. So let's end it here, and I'll take your questions, and thank you for listening. I'm ready to take your questions now. Maybe Doreya wants to say something.
No, I'm just gonna go see the list with the hands up. Okay, so let me just see. So it's participants whose hands are raised. I'm gonna be calling randomly the names I see here. Okay, so let's go to Munir. And I think I have to press allow to talk. Okay, so Munir, I think you're still muted.
Can't hear anyone.
No, there we go. He's unmuted.
Okay.
Hi. Thank you for taking my question. Surprised I didn't really raise. I don't know if I raised my hand on purpose. Maybe that was my.
It's there in the list.
I do have a question. You mentioned the place in the heart mentioned by the prophet. Had a couple questions about that. Is there a word for that used in the Quran, and how can we find that resonance in practice?
Okay, in the Quran, there is the word intellect of the heart. That means there's a word saying the hearts that you perceive with, the hearts that you think with. It's in Surah Al-Hajj, you'll find it there. The heart that, and in many places in the Quran, you'll find mention of the heart that you think with, that the wrong thinking of the heart, the right thinking of the heart, you will find that in the Quran. And you'll find that also in other religious scriptures like the Ancient Testament and all that. You will, the Prophet, when he said, he spoke about the heart, he spoke about, he said, there is a place, not a place, like a little, when you hold a little dough in your hand like that, and you make a small piece of bread in your hand like that. So he said, there is a piece of this called modra in Arabic. There's a piece as big as a modra. That means as big as something that you can chew. There's a place like this in the heart that if this is corrected, the whole body is corrected. Okay?
I think Munir's muted again.
Okay. Who else?
Okay, so let's jump to, well, here's a familiar name, Angie.
Andy?
Another familiar name. So Munir, you were muted again, so I'm going to assume your question was answered.
Okay, this is Andy.
Angie.
Angie? Oh, Angie, check, yeah. Hello, Angie.
Wait, I think, sorry, I have to press allow to talk, don't I?
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't actually have a question. My hand was raised.
Oh, like Munir. Okay.
Well, it's good to see you again, Angie, anyhow.
Nice to talk to you, but yes, no, I was taking some great notes here, but all of it seemed to pretty much make sense, about what you were talking about. So I didn't have a specific question on the material.
No problem.
Thank you.
So I'll go down the list. I think in the beginning when I said everybody try raising your hand. Okay, so let's go to Rita. Rita Blackwood.
I don't have a question, but I want to thank you so much for this presentation that you've given me. It's been awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rita.
Thank you for being with us.
Nice having you with us.
Okay, let's jump to Jessie Swing. Okay, so Jessie, are you with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, Jessie.
Hi, thank you so much. So many other traditions, or a few at least, have believed the pathway to the unconscious mind is through the heart. So I'm wondering if this is something you believe, and if so, do you have a method of tapping into the unconscious, some kind of practice or ritual?
Okay, now, of course, this is something I believe because the brain of the heart is a very important place. I've been doing some research lately on how to balance the whole body just through the brain of the heart. Now, we have been testing a biosignature for quite some time now. You know, when you make a biosignature, you have to fine tune it. If it's a biosignature for the brain of the heart, that means I have to fine tune it and research it with a huge number of disturbances and with every aspect of the body. And whenever I find in any person a small part that hasn't been totally harmonized, I tweak this biosignature again. And I've been working on it a lot lately for a few months, because it is also an important solution for things like the pandemics that are coming and all that. We need something that through the brain heart corrects us completely. And probably we'll have in a couple of months, I'll have it ready and it will be available for everybody. And you can wear one biosignature, activates the intellect of the heart, adjusts the whole body. This was my dream for many years, and I think I'm that close to it. So let's hope so. Let's pray together.
Awesome, thank you.
And I think also, I mean, a lot of you will remember from class or from the special topics, there was already one biosignature, the essay node biosignature, that we always say to consider a general biosignature, and also was mentioned a lot in the special topics on time. So next I will jump to, I'm saying this name wrong, so bear with me, Rupi or Ruipe, R-U-I-P-E.
Hello, Rupi? Hello, Rupi?
I think they're still muted. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Hello?
I think they're unmuted. Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello?
So it's me.
Yes, it is you.
It's you, who's that?
You had your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Well, not especially about the subject.
Oh, Rui,
very-
your name is
yeah.
coming out.
Ah,
It's
that's
coming out
Rui?
with a P.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Rui, how are you, Rui? Haven't seen you for a long time.
Yeah. Nice to hear from you.
So it's Rui, your hand was raised by accident?
No.
Go ahead then.
There's always something
Always
about any
something
subject that we can ask about. And well, when you spoke about the connection about the heart brain, the ear, and getting in resonance with the what's around us,
Yes.
I have a question for a long time, which is when I'm harmonizing, for example, some space, I hear a ringing in my ear.
Yes.
And when the space is really harmonized, that ringing stops.
Yes.
It's not always, but most of the times, if there is something it's not okay or not well harmonized, that ringing is louder. And when it gets okay, it stops. Is there any sense of it?
Yes, because energy, the source of energy in the environment is linked to the heart. And like I said, the brain of the heart is linked to the inner ear. So I'll show you what a simple way. I'll take out my pendulum like this. And the 3 points that I mentioned that are linked to the heart, we said that one point was here. Okay, you see the right on
Yes.
the top right. Okay, if you put your pendulum here, just a few minutes, the IQP like that, just a few seconds, I mean, then the brain of the heart is balanced. Or you put it on the pineal gland, it's balanced. Or you put it behind the ear, a bit behind the ear like that, towards the middle ear, it will balance here. And the opposite is true. If you come to the heart like this, to the top of the heart here, to the right side top, and put the pendulum here, it will balance the pineal and balance the inner ear. So they are linked in a way. So what the heart senses can be felt in the inner ear and can be sometimes as a vision. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much. It was really good to hear from you again.
Well, I'm happy to
nice to
hear
you. We can't see you. So nice to hear you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see also some questions that were typed. I'll answer. I'll ask you the relevant ones. So one here is coming in. You might have answered this already. Would you please speak about how we heal the heart-mind rift today to bring back harmony in human relations? I'm concerned that the elastic band is going to snap.
Well, usually we have an innate thing in us that when we are under a lot of pressure, we sort of daydream. Daydream means visualize. So what does that mean? That means when the left brain perception is creating too much tension, the right brain automatically kicks in. And when it does that, you sort of daydream means you go away from your five senses and starts visualizing, starts dreaming things, and daydreaming is very relaxing. You should indulge in things like mastering a sport. Mastering a sport will take you, anything that has mastery or harmony in it will take you into the right brain. Listening to music, reading poetry, doing yoga, doing meditation, all kinds of things like that. All those things will somehow pull you towards the heart. Fitness, if done with a lot of wisdom, the right balance, the right way that suits your body and all that, with the right rhythm, always rhythm is important here, will take you to that part. Now, walking, just walking will help, but I'll give you one good exercise that is very, very effective. If you synchronize your breath with your steps, with your heartbeat, okay? And you do those three, and then I'll add something. But you know, if you, let's say you're taking steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If this is my heart tempo, so I could breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4, adjust that with my steps, and then adjust the steps to, and the steps and the breathing, both of them, to the heartbeat. And then I could repeat anything, a repetition of a mantra or something, or a sound, any repetition that goes also along the heartbeat, you see. So here I have connected the heartbeat to the breath. I connect to walking, to the steps, and I've connected it to the mind. So this is a very good exercise that will activate the intellect of the heart. And then it's important to listen to your intuitions. You know, whenever you're doing any action, people always think that when I do this, is it right or wrong? I should ask somebody if it's right or wrong. You don't ask anybody because your heart knows what's right and wrong. So when you ask your heart about what's wrong, that means in every activity you do, consult your heart about the ethics of every part of that activity. These are the ways that you slowly activate the heart brain.
Okay, let me see. So another question here, I'll take it from the comments and then we'll jump to a final person. So if we exist in multiple dimensions, can we get affected to what happens to us in those dimensions? Will balancing ourselves in our dimension also balance ourselves in other dimensions?
Okay, now, when we usually interact with all dimensions in our unconscious level, so our heart perceives all dimensions. And if it perceives all dimensions, it means that it's affected by all dimensions. So the 1% that we perceive is always affected by the 99% anyhow. But if I take the reins in my hand, instead of being affected, instead of letting those other dimensions that I don't know of affect me, I can become an organizing principle. I can become the carrier of the universal balance through my actions. So by putting the ethics in my actions, like I said, I have included the 99% in my actions. Now I have excellence of action, and excellence of action will always radiate excellence through all the invisible dimensions. So I will be, although I'm only living in my physical dimension, through excellence of action, I will be affecting all the other dimensions, bringing harmony into them, instead of just being affected by them. I'll play an active role in harmonizing the universe. Now, it might seem a bit strange if I tell you that a human action could actually have harmonizing effects on the whole universe, on other beings, on other dimensions, and things like that. But it is like that. Excellence of action, the heart through excellence of action, bring the heart into action, you achieve excellence of action, you become master of the universe. You are bringing harmony into the whole universe.
So I'll take one now from hands raised. So Anemona, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong as well, Anemona.
You haven't pronounced one name right
No.
till now.
But my name, everybody gets wrong.
Yes, you didn't get one name right.
Well, hello, both of you. Thank you very much for putting this up. This is great.
I think we could. You should tell him I pronounced your name right.
Yes, she did perfectly.
Anemona.
Anemona?
Yes.
Anemona?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I got it right.
Sure. Okay. Hello, Anemona.
Hello, hello. Thank you very much for picking me out. And thank you very much for this amazing presentation, as usual. I have two. The first thing is actually not a question, but something that I've noticed. I'm an artist, and using biogeometry and measuring BG3, I've noticed that actually this is the measuring point is in my heart somehow. I feel it physically in my heart. So maybe this is also connected to this kind of heart brain to a certain extent. I have no idea. And
every time you measure with BG3,
yes.
Every time you take the BG3 pendulum and look for BG3,
yes.
The measurement connects directly to the brain of the heart.
Exactly. This is what I felt physically.
Yes, you got it right.
Yes. So that means that I could actually, if I want to work with the brain of the heart, I would have to, I could identify it by personal wavelength, or how do you find it? This is actually my question. How do you find it if you want to look for it and work with it?
Well, the brain of your heart will have the same personal vibration like you.
Yeah.
It will have the same personal wavelengths, but you could just take your pendulum like that adjust it on your personal wavelength, and then go like that on the right side here of the heart, near the center, go
Yes.
here, and then when it turns left, you see, in most of the time, the brain of the heart is off balance because it is reacting to multidimensionality, and the way our information environment and the way our environment is full of electromagnetic radiation and chemicals and all that, you'll find that the brain of the heart is not happy with everything around that. So you will find the spot that turns left. And when it turns left like this, you just take the pendulum and put it on it like this.
Okay.
Or, like I said, put the pendulum on your middle ear or in the middle here up, or on your pineal gland. All those points will reach the heart here.
Great. Thank you very much.
And like I said, you know, the breathing, walking exercises and all that.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you, Alemara.
So I think we can go for one last question.
Okay.
Okay. So Susanna Raymond.
Where is Susanna? Hi, Susanna.
Wait, she's still muted. Some people might have had their hands up from earlier, so
Yeah, it was gone before, but hello to both of you. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. It's like all the time.
Susanna, I can't hear you well. Can you just?
Oh,
it's hard to hear you.
you can?
Now
it's okay.
Whew, I don't know where my microphone is really. I thought it was in the display here, but I want to say thank you. It was like all times, and you know, it's very important that we practice these things with the heart, because I think that's in the direction that we.
Well, can I tell you one thing, Susanna, since we're at it? When adjusting your Hamburg emitter, you know,
Yeah.
when adjusting the setting of your Hamburg emitter, measure that on the Haupt axis of the dial, your setting, measure that you get the maximum BG3 on the main dial. The other will be somewhere in the ultraviolet range. The moment you hit the right spot, even if the Hamburg emitter is not pointed at you, you will find that the point of the heart will actually start turning right. So you can use the quality of the brain of the heart to find the optimum adjustment for your devices.
That's wonderful. Yes, I sure will try that. Actually, I'm going to write you because I had some good news on that also about the impregnation too. So great. Thanks again.
Thank you, Susanna.
Yeah, okay, so let's take one more question. Reinhard Gress.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, and hello, Ibrahim. Ibrahim, I'm wondering, what does the modern man, woman, humanity has to do from day to day when you look at our way we live and our wrongdoings, why we're so much on the left, why we have, call it religion, technology. What do we do from today or tomorrow to move us over to the right brain?
You know, Reinhard, it's not really something that you can help, because how do we get pulled more and more into left brain? And how are we pulled more and more into diversification, separation? This comes from our left brain and our sensory perception becoming more efficient in our modern technology. For example, look at how, for example, if I take my daughter or my son and watch them play a video game, they'll be so much more adept, the way they concentrate, the way they move and everything, much, much better than me. Or if I take now a grandchild who is 5, 6 years old, they go on a computer, on a game, and they're even much more adept than the adults. So that means that with every generation now, the senses are being more, let's say, efficient. And unfortunately, the more efficient means more diversifying, means more analytical, means pulling us more into this world, you see. And that, you see that in the world of internet today. Everything, the new generation are becoming so fast at doing things that the left brain perception has reached really a very, very advanced level. So how can we sort of pull them back into things that will activate the right brain besides that? I mean, instead of just playing a computer game, maybe pull the child towards some sports, maybe towards some hiking, maybe towards things like that. So it is just trying to implement the right brain things, sports, music, hobbies, and all that. We try to do that more and more. You know, today, in the world of computers and games and all that, the children don't want to do sports anymore. They don't want to do all those things. All they want to do, you know, if you tell them, for example, come and play tennis with me, I'm going to play a game of tennis, they'll tell you, I can play it on the computer. I don't need to, I don't need to go out with you and play. I tell them, come and do that with me. Yeah, everything I tell them, come and do that. Let's do this together. Let's do that. They look at you as if, hey, do you come from Stone Age or what? Today we can do that, all that on the computer. That is very dangerous because that keeps pulling them more into the left brain senses.
Yeah.
And you know, what happens is we have gone so far as even saying that we can, through artificial intelligence, create human life.
Yeah, that's dangerous. Yeah.
First of all, you cannot create human life. Forget about that. The only thing you can create is you can simulate human intellect. Now, if you can simulate human intellect, one day the computers will be much better at intellectual activities than the human brain, at intellectual activities. And then they will be able to run things much more efficiently than the human brain. Then a step further, they will control the whole situation. So once they control the whole situation, let's take a far-fetched idea. If we have a project and some things are being done computerized and some things are being done by humans, the computer will tell you, no, the humans are not efficient. Let's take them out of the formula slowly. Then one day, the computer will say, to make the world more efficient, let's get rid of humanity altogether, you know, and make the world more efficient. Because to the computer, efficiency is the most important thing, but they don't have a conscience. So in biogeometry, we learn that biogeometry means geometry, geometry means sensing, metry is measuring, geo, earth, bio is the life force. So in biogeometry, what we do is we connect to BG3. Why connect to BG3? I mean, the system of dowsing and all that, none of them connect to BG3. We connect to BG3 because it's the central vortex that brings in life force. So the biogeometry design principles, they are made to bring life force into matter. Now, so that if you do a design product and it has BG3, that means you connected it to life force, and it becomes part of the design process of nature. What we have today in modern technology, we have things that are completely empty of life force, and they're being planted into the body of the earth, and they're causing disruption of life force. So life force here is actually the thing that the more you work with life force, the more the intellect of the heart works, because life force is this is the domain, the specialty of the intellect of the heart. And practically in our work in biogeometry, that's achieving the centering effect. That means the communicating effect with the higher levels, bringing in the life force. So the more you work with BG3, the more you activate the heart brain.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we went a little bit 10 minutes over, but I know there were some people with their hands raised without questions. So so next time we'll try to finish right on time for those who put an hour and a half aside.
Yeah, next time I'll try to finish 10 minutes earlier. Not to take time.
Yes, I promised him we'd keep it to an hour and a half. And a lot of people watching as well. I know you set aside an hour and a half. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you. I think it's May 18th, but you should have gotten if you signed up for the Zoom, you had the date. So thank you, everyone. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Big hugs that we can't do in person, huh?